Well, folks, a grand jury has been convened in connection with the attempted assassination on Donald J. Trump. Some folks are taking this as a positive step, saying as how, oh, see, this makes it clear. Thomas Crooks, even the FBI doesn't think he acted alone. Clearly there was a broader plot here, more to be unraveled, things we don't know. We're going to find out the truth. Although not everyone is super optimistic about it, and I think that is I think that's the correct attitude here. You shouldn't assume, certainly, that the FBI is trying to get to the truth of the matter. If anything, what the FBI would like to do is recontextualize the narrative, reshape the narrative, because the initial narrative about the lone shooter, the lone wolf, people just haven't bought that. There's been a lot of dissent about it, and so the way I see this is they're doing some kind of investigation. They're going to maybe charge some people. They are going to come up with a new narrative about how Thomas Crooks had assistants, how he had collaborators, how he had enablers. Most likely candidates being his parents. They're going to blame his family, which they probably did nothing wrong, if I had to take a guess. They're probably going to be scapegoated, and because they think that that'll be a more believable story. And then they hope, hey, once they do that, people will go, okay, see, the initial narrative, it didn't make any sense, but here's something different, and, people will grab hold of that and say, okay, I'm happy with this narrative, and I'm going to go back to sleep now, and we're all going to move on from the Trump assassination. Based on what few details we have, that's what I'm assuming this is going to turn into. Obviously, we don't have everything yet. All we have is essentially the confirmation that the grand jury has been impaneled. That's all we know. Other than that, what exactly they're investigating, who the targets of the investigation are, we don't know any of that yet. And you know what? It's possible that they don't indict anybody. As the saying goes, a grand jury could indict a ham sandwich, but these are crazy times we're living in, so I'm not going to just go out and say, oh yeah, somebody's going to be indicted out of this. It's like, no, you never know. We don't know what the purpose of this is. Remember, the feds are in control. They're the ones leading this. They're the ones organizing this. So it's their interests that are being served here by this grand jury. The question is how this serves their interests. And so assuming that somebody somewhere is indicted by this grand jury, I assume it will be the parents. If not the parents, some other patsy who they will say assisted Thomas Crooks, maybe helped scout the position, something like that. Something totally innocuous that doesn't change the overall nature of the official narrative, something that doesn't shake people's understanding of the situation, but is all the while more believable. And so I think that's about all there is to say on that. I did want to touch on that today because it is coming out and it is important. It is something I want to keep an eye on. But other than that, we don't know anything. So moving on to the state of the presidential race, I would say I've got only a 60% confidence at this point that there's going to be a presidential debate on September the 10th. It kind of sucks. I was looking forward to the debates, but considering how conservative the Harris campaign has been, and by conservative, I mean they have not let her go sit for an interview since she became the candidate, since she was anointed by the Democratic Party as Joe Biden's replacement. The winner of the primary who won 0 votes. It's been, 40 days? And the American people are not learning anything about her. It was only the last couple of weeks that they started putting out policy statements, and they all sound suspiciously Trumpian, including one earlier this week. I think it was a Monday, where in Politico, the Harris campaign says that, Kamala's going to build the wall. It's like, what? And so now they finally announced, okay, she's going to go on TV. She's going to sit for an interview. But it's going to be with Tim Walz. She can't do it by herself. Tim Walz has to be there to play the jester, look like an idiot, so that she can appear smarter. And it's going to be in front of CNN's Dana Bash, very comfortable and friendly environment. The woman who helped install Kamala Harris, she and Jake Tapper, Dana Bash and Jake Tapper, they worked tirelessly in order to humiliate Joe Biden and force him out of the presidential race. It was that debate back in June with Trump which spurred the entire movement to install Harris as the nominee. And so it's only fitting that Harris would feel most comfortable in the court of Dana Bash. But considering this is all they're doing, it's been this long and we're this close to when the debates are supposed to happen, I don't see how they'll feel comfortable putting her out there in a debate. That's like just going into the lion's den when you haven't even taken down an elk yet. Or not an elk. What are those things called in Africa? A gazelle? Anyway, you get the point. She's not ready for a debate. If she can't they should have her out there, every couple of days doing long sit-down interviews at the very least. Because that's easy mode compared to trying to do a debate when you have an opponent who's going to try and call you out in real time. Sitting for interviews with friendly journos who love you and want you to do, the best you can, who are going to hold your hand. If you can't do that, if you're not comfortable doing that, if you think that it hurts your campaign to do that, you're not going to be going for the debate. Now, Trump himself also has said a lot of stuff about how, he's been hemming and hawing about the debate and how, he doesn't feel like he should have to do it, blah, blah, blah. I take that less seriously because that's just sort of Trump's style. He always complains about stuff. He sees that as like a negotiation tactic. He sees that as a way of, getting what he wants. But at the end of the day, I think that Trump would ultimately want to do the debate. I mean, it makes him look better. It helps him. I think everyone thinks that. Maybe Trump doesn't think that. Maybe he really is scared of Kamala Harris. Maybe he really is shaking in his boots. But again, if that were the case, then all the more reason why Harris should want to be in the debate and should want to be on TV if she really thinks that she presents that well. She should want to answer questions. She should be eager to talk about her campaign. You would think, she needs to make up for lost time because she hasn't been campaigning for all these months because Joe Biden was the one campaigning. All this money was spent promoting Joe Biden's agenda. Everyone knows what Joe Biden thinks about things, but people don't know what she thinks. And yet they're basically taking, the opposite strategy. They're trying to be as vague and vapid as possible, which is sadly typical. But anyway, despite all that, despite the cover-up of Trump's assassination and the shrinking likelihood that there will be any kind of presidential debate, at least in the near future, despite that, things are looking quite good for Trump. Those of you who have followed many presidential election cycles, will probably remember that the Republican candidate, and Trump in particular, usually does not perform that well in the polls. And what I mean by that is not that, they're always doing so terrible and that they always lose polls. I mean that when you get to Election Day, the Republican, odds are, is going to be the one who outperforms the polls. When there is a polling miss, it's almost always to the upside for Republicans. Republicans outperform polling. That's just a general rule. There are reasons for that. The main one that you hear talked about being response bias. Republican voters, very skeptical of the media, skeptical of pollsters. They're less likely to share their true intentions. They're less likely to answer the phone. When they do answer the phone and they hear it's a pollster, they're more likely to hang up immediately. And so despite all that, in most of the polls, national polls that I've seen that seem to be being published, Harris only has a slight lead, whereas you would expect, if she's actually doing well, she should have a substantial lead over Trump in the polls because, she needs to have some wiggle room, she needs to have some breathing room to account for that response bias. And so if, with all that factored in, unless American polling, media polls have just gotten super accurate for some reason in 2024, more accurate than they have been in past cycles, which we have no reason to indicate that. The only conclusion is that, Harris is not doing very well. And that if she's, let's say, in a national poll, only leading Trump by 2%, then there's a good chance that Trump could actually win the popular vote. Not even talking about the Electoral College. I mean, Republicans don't need to win the popular vote to win the Electoral College. That's all that matters. And so if you have a Republican winning the popular vote, Trump would be winning, let's say, by a good deal more than he won in 2016, if that's the case. And so I would think there's a lot of uncertainty right now on the Democratic side. They have an untested candidate, someone who did not survive a rigorous primary process, someone who has not had a great history of doing televised debates. Actually have a pretty disastrous history of televised debates. And someone who's not used to being in competitive races because, of course, Kamala Harris has only won elections in the state of California, which is overwhelmingly Democratic. I will see you folks back here in the next one.